tonight, eh?
Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Lionel.
Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Lionel.
Hey, how are we making out on fixing that Patreon problem? I wonder if by now, when it's, by the time this podcast comes out, if we fixed it or not.
If I was a betting man, I would say likely not.
Yeah, I know, eh? It's like, well, we're not having it at this end. Well, everybody's having it at their end.
Yeah, everybody else is having it there. We sent you pictures. We sent you what the problem is, and you guys can't figure it out.
So once a month they have this thing called Hang Time with the CEO.
All right.
And as we record this, the next hang time will be September 20th at 1 p.m.
Right.
Guess who's going to be there?
I would guess that a representative of and founding father of AML will be hanging with the CEO.
With photos in hand.
Saying, here you nimrods.
Yeah. Fix this. For God's sakes, fix it. Because it was our buddy Michael Peterson from Iowa Scaled Engineering that found the MP2 thing embedded into the thanks, Michael. And they've got grain bins now, those Iowa Scaled Engineering.
I saw that. Those are nice looking bins.
Yeah, what do they call it? They even have that company has a name now.
Like Butler bins, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you mean, Iowa Scaled Rails or the bins?
No, Iowa Scaled Engineering, and they Grain Life, I think it's called.
Oh, okay, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of a play on Train Life.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe.
But that's a different.
Yeah, that's a different thing. So can't be.
I'm looking. Oh, somebody has a bell going.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Bruce, before we get started on this, can you tell me if this is the last podcast?
Yeah, it's the last podcast. That's right.
Can you tell me if this is the last podcast we ever do?
I'll give you about even on that one.
Yeah.
For those playing at home, what's your over-under on this one?
Yeah.
Let me check.
Oh,
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Is this the first podcast since the last podcast?
We don't know that because, as we discussed once before when you asked that question, we have no idea when this is going to air.
That's
so
true.
it may be the first since the last, but it might not also be the first since the last.
That's
but
true.
It's definitely the last since the first. I don't know.
Grain Belt Models.
Grain Belt Models. There you go.
They even have a trademark and things. Our grain bins are amazing. Oh, and then they put
they spelled amazing like the maize as the plant. Very clever.
I get it. I wonder who came up with that.
Oh, maybe it was our buddy Scott.
Yeah, maybe it was Scott Thornton. I hear
but
you.
We still understand why Iowa Scaled Engineering is in Colorado. That's the confusing part.
Yeah. Iowa Scaled Engineering, of course, they're headquartered in Colorado, just outside of Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah, those boys moved to smoke some of the happy grass.
Or they didn't do so well at geography.
Yeah, or they did do so well at geography. Great guy.
We failed geography, but let's start a company anyhow.
Yeah. All right.
I love them because they did wonderful things for your...
yes, the One More Year Fund. Those guys donated 2 of their proto throttles and raised a whole pile of money for them.
Yes, sir.
And that's really, really cool. So thanks, Michael Peterson and Nathan Holmes. And, of course, the always lovable, the always affable, the always fun to talk to, Scott Thornton.
Yeah. Do you think he'll sell 100?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, so tonight we're going to do something that we occasionally do, but this is kind of exciting. I'm actually kind of excited about this. We're going to talk to a fellow named Jim Gore.
Yes.
Who I had never met at all, except a little bit of back and forth on Facebook Messenger. And I've never talked to him. I don't really know much about Jim. So this is going to be an in-depth interview with Jim Gore, who lives in Florida.
Yes.
And we first heard of him from our sister podcast, Model Rail Radio.
That could be correct. But I've also seen Jim's name bounce around a lot on various forums, plus his own Facebook pages. Jim is a master model railroader in the NMRA. but he does a lot of work with paper modeling, i.e. modeling out of cardstock and that type of thing. And
Wow.
this is something I'm kind of interested in and done a little bit with. And Jim does some amazing work. And I thought he'd be a great guy to talk to. We'll go through the usual with him, find out how he got started, all that. But to talk some more about the paper modeling aspect of things and see how easy it is to make pretty good looking models for your railroad.
That sounds like a great idea. Let's get him out of the green room. Seeing as how there's only two of us here, I'm sending you.
Okay, hang on. I'll be right back. Hey, Jim, come on out, buddy.
Yeah.
You didn't need the green shrimp, did you?
No.
Good boy. Have a seat on the couch, preferably the non-McGurk end.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah. Be careful. Somebody McGurked on the couch there.
It's getting close to that time of year where it's Marty McGurk month again, isn't it?
It is coming up to Marty McGurk month. And I know our buddy Ron Marsh wants to talk to him.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So, we digress because you're here to talk to Jim.
And look at this. I typed in Jim Gore on Google, and up came Jim Gore is a master model railroader, and he is the at-large North American director for the NMRA.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, indeed.
Did you know that, Jim, or is this all a surprise to you?
I've heard.
Rumor has it.
They make me go early to board meetings, so I guess I'm a member.
So I'm going to completely apologize before we get started. Usually I apologize to our guests more towards the end of the interviews. But I'm going to apologize at the start because I've heard your name occasionally, but I really have no idea who the heck you are. And we've never met. And so I thought this would be really cool because I've heard lots of glowing reports, and Bruce speaks very highly of you. Just before you came into the studio, he was talking about your paper modeling and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I thought we would just we would explore the world of Jim Gore.
Okay, that sounds good.
But let's get the necessities out of the way first. So have you been a lifelong model railroader? Did you start when you were 32? How did you
I've been pretty much a model railroader all my life. As a matter of fact, I have some photos somewhere of me with my father's standard gauge railroad back in the late 40s, early 50s. And every Christmas he'd put it around the tree and then make some bold kind of attempt to build a layout until my mother chased him out. And we had a small house back at that time. So all I can remember about it much is that the incredible smell of ozone as that thing buzzed around the room. But he had a great time, and I just never stopped.
So incredible smell of ozone. What was that?
Well, the 3-rail standard gauge, the pickups would arc like mad, and just the ozone from the arcing of between the rail and the pickups was pretty strong. It's an indelible memory.
Yeah, now you mention it, I vaguely remember that myself. So where did this take place when you were a kid and your dad was setting up this layout?
This was in Los Alamos, New Mexico.
Okay.
Oh.
So that's where you're from originally.
That's correct. Both of my parents were part of the Manhattan Project.
Oh, really?
I was about to ask that question. There we go. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the Manhattan Project was, roughly, for people that may not know,
the development of the atomic bomb.
Wow. So both your parents were scientists?
Yes. Uh-huh. My mother worked in theoretical mathematics, and my father was what they called at that time an electrochemical engineer. More closely now they're nuclear engineers and things like that. But
so
that's what they did.
They were kind of like rocket scientists.
Well, kind of like, yeah.
Yeah. Like our very own Kaylee Zhang, who single-handedly builds Pratt & Whitney turbine engines and then installs them on Airbus A320s all by herself.
Oh, well, I flew a Pratt & Whitney a long time ago.
Well, there you go. I'm trying to get her. She says they're connected to the wings with 3 bolts, and I'm trying to convince her to do it with 4.
Well, that would help, yeah.
Because I don't like going down. I don't like going down the runway and watching the engine wiggle as we're getting up to V1 and rotation speed. I don't care
That's
for that.
true. That's true.
I find that unnerving.
Can't understand that.
Yeah. So all right. So your dad had the tree going around the train going around the tree.
Yep.
And then, so pretty much it's probably the same as me. Since 4 or 5, you always remember trains and model railroading to be a part of your life.
Oh, absolutely. My father gave me a Lionel set in about 1955, 56, something like that. That served me well until high school. And then I switched over to HO and then dropped that, went back to N and then back to HO. And now I'm modeling ON30. So I've played it all.
And currently you live in Florida.
Right, in St. Petersburg. Yep. For about another 6 or 8 months.
And then where are you going?
Moving to New Hampshire.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How come?
Well, we just recently inherited a very large farm, and we're going to revamp renovate the entire farm.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
It'll be fun, I think. Yeah.
How big is the farm?
It's around 400 acres.
Wow.
Wow, that's
yeah,
big.
It's a big place.
That's a big place for New Hampshire. Yeah.
Yeah, the house was built in 1803 and has been there ever since. So we're going to renovate some of it, and I got a 40 by 60 foot hayloft for my layout for my new layout.
I don't want to.
Not that you've been thinking about that at all.
No, of course not.
I don't want to be a killjoy or anything. Like, I don't want to throw a bucket of water on your excitement.
Uh-huh.
But you know that it snows in New Hampshire, right?
I've heard that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm used to that though. In Los Alamos, even when I was a kid, we only had 2 seasons, July and winter. So it's not going to be any different then.
That's kind of like Newfoundland in Canada. That they have 2 seasons: last winter and next winter.
Kind of like, yeah.
So how long have you lived in Florida?
About 16 years.
So did you retire to there, or were you? Oh, I see right here. I'm looking at your write up for. Look at that. Look at me doing research, Bruce.
Wow.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, I know.
You hit the wrong button.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a complete fluke. It was certainly not intentional to be prepared. You're a retired professor of biology from the University of Tampa.
That's correct. About 2 years ago.
Home of the Fighting
Spartans. They're Division 2.
Okay, well, that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
All right. So now, okay. So did you like when do you remember your first real full-fledged stab at model railroading? Or like were you 10 or 12 and you had it in your bedroom kind of thing? Or?
Yeah, that kind of thing on a 4 by 8 foot sheet of plywood that sort of slid under the bed, and that was about it. And it was a very simple plan, just a loop around there with plenty of room for lots of buildings. I was even back then into building buildings. I particularly loved those old Revell models. Those were just marvelous.
Yeah, so you were a modeler pretty early on.
Pretty much, yeah.
Did you take a break at all through the teenage years for girls and cars, or?
Oh yeah, you have to take over, looking for slow women and fast cars.
Yeah.
So, of course. But that took up only 3 or 4 years of my life, and then I was back to model railroading again.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not kidding about the snow. Like seriously, it does snow in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I know it does. We've already taken care of that.
Yeah, do you have a snowblower?
Yes, we do. And actually, we have a plow.
Are you going to take it with you? Like, do you keep it in the garage in Florida?
No, I don't have one down here. It's just a grass blower down here.
You know what? I have a place in Florida myself. This winter, we have got to make a point of getting together at least for lunch or something.
That sounds good. Anytime.
All right. So, help me along here, Bruce.
Okay.
Okay. So where'd you go to university?
Well, I went to a couple of different places. I went to the University of Colorado for my undergraduate degree. And then after a couple of years being waylaid in Southeast Asia, I went to the University of Montana to do my master's and my PhD.
In biology.
In biology, yes.
And what did you do in Vietnam?
I was in the Navy, and I flew on and off an aircraft carrier.
Oh, really? You were a jet fighter pilot?
No, I wasn't. I was what we used to call the guy in back.
Oh, okay.
A rear seater.
Rear seater. That's correct.
Oh, wow.
So what do those guys do?
What do those guys do? Well, when I was there, escorted B-52s mostly to on what was called Linebacker 1 and Linebacker 2. Those are the two operations that to bomb Hanoi.
Okay, so like when you say backseater, so there's two guys in the jet, in a jet?
In an F-4 Phantom, yes.
F-4 Phantom. So what does the guy in the back seat do? Does he just along for the ride, taking
the
snaps?
official, yeah, that's correct. I held on to the pilot. No, it's legally, I guess, officially called a radar intercept officer, and mostly it's it's sort of all kinds of different stuff. It's mostly sitting there staring at a radar and watching for the enemy.
Okay, so that must have been
and deploying anti-warfare kinds of things.
Right. So how did you and don't answer any questions that you don't want to answer. Like obviously this is not any kind of hard-hitting news show. This is just
correct.
This is just us trying to, how would I say it, Bruce? We're just winding our way through the world of model railroading.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But the people you meet in this hobby are fascinating. Absolutely unbelievable.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely.
I have came up with, because of the podcast, I've come up with this description that I use for people that don't understand the podcast or don't understand the hobby. And it's one of the few hobbies where you can have a guy that's the retired professor of biology from the University of Tampa. And if he's interested in Jeep 38s from the mono railroad, like, and he meets a guy that's not of lesser talent, but meets a guy that says works for FedEx. The guys can be great friends regardless of their positions in life.
Absolutely. It's got nothing to do with what you do with your other life.
Yeah, and it makes such great friendships, like lifelong friendships.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely.
Of people you'd never meet.
Yep. That's for sure.
All right. So how does a guy decide he's going to be the backseat guy in a Phantom F4?
They decided that for me.
Like how many F4s did you destroy before they said, you know what?
No, I don't fly it. I just sit in the back. Actually, it's a very long and not terribly interesting story, but needless to say, the Navy decided it was something I would really wanted to do. So I did it for a while and then said, okay, I'm done.
Were you going to say something, Bruce?
Oh, I was just going to say, and then as soon as the Navy's footing the bill, you say, yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're footing the bill. They dragged me out of my nice, safe bedroom and said, guess where you're going?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, one of the what's the word I'm looking for, Bruce? One of the things I insist on the podcast. Prerequisites of staying on, to keeping me from pulling the plug on this, is that people would be fascinated, me included, would be fascinated. What's it like to take off and land from a jet, from an aircraft carrier?
Well, it's kind of terrifying the first time you do it. At least it was for me. When the catapult grabs you and throws you off the end, it always kind of startled me when I looked back up through the canopy and the flight deck was above us. And you take a big dip downward before you have enough thrust to get up into the air and actually above the level of the flight deck. That was kind of surprising.
So you go. So okay, and is it a real jolt when it sends you down the?
Well, you get used to it. It throws you pretty hard, about a G and a half, I suppose.
Okay.
At one point. Yeah.
And landing, what is that? Just like it's like that would, to me, seems like it would be even more sudden than taking off almost.
Well, it is when you hit. When you land and the tailhook grabs the cable, you come to a screeching halt pretty quickly. But the whole thing is, even back in Vietnam, it was almost all automatic. There's something called an ACLS, Automatic Carrier Landing System, and you flick that on and pretty much it does it all for you. At least it does it all for the pilot. I sit in the back seat and try not to wet myself, so
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, this is the type of job, Lionel, I don't think you would be cut out for it.
I think I'd be okay at the front end. Other the guy sitting in the front.
Yeah,
Oh no.
I'd be no good at the guy in the back.
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be great at running it, but I'd be no good at riding along handing out sandwiches.
Oh, that would have been so nice.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, so you go to the Vietnam, you serve your country, which is very, very cool. Cool in a sense that you felt you wanted to or needed to. I think that's very cool. I think all the guys in Vietnam, I mean, everybody that serves, including our buddy Ray Stewart, everybody that serves should be very well recognized. But the guys in Vietnam took it in the neck, I think.
Well, they did. Yes, they did.
And I think that's very cool. So, okay, so you come home, and when do you feel like you really started to get into the hobby of model railroading?
I was pretty much in it even in Vietnam. There were a group of about 10 of us on board the aircraft carrier who had a model railroading club. We'd just sit around and talk about stuff, but we met about once a week. There was enlisted guys and officers, and we just sat around and, you know, you'd get these packages in the mail where there'd be about a half a dozen copies of Model Railroader and Railroad Model Craftsman, and we'd all sit around and pass them around and gee, if I ever get out of here, I'm going to do that kind of thing. So
what year would this have been?
1970, 71, into 72.
All right, so Bruce.
Which carrier?
USS Ranger.
All right.
So Bruce.
Yes.
I'm going to declare right here, right now, at this spot. I don't know when this will be aired, probably just before Christmas or just after Christmas. I'm going to declare right now that is one of the coolest things we've ever found out doing this podcast.
It certainly is. It's we know Mike Deverell and his auto-rotating flying choppers and stuff like that. Yeah. But getting launched from a carrier is a whole other world.
And
no offense to Mike.
No, I mean that they had that there was like 10 or 12.
Oh, that they had the Model Railroader.
I think that.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very cool that there was guys, on the carrier, SS Ranger, or is it SS or is there
USS?
USS Ranger. That they had a model railroad get together.
Exactly.
Yeah, we did.
That is very cool. It is. I'm sorry, but I think it's cool.
Oh, it is.
Like it's something I would have never even imagined.
Well, I didn't either. It just happened where you talked to one guy who said he was interested in model railroads, and pretty soon he mentioned it to somebody else, and we just sort of gravitated together over a period of maybe 30, 60 days on a line period. So
yeah. I'm going to say to our buddy in Australia, Rod Deary, Rod, is that not one of the coolest things you've ever heard? Or Nick Carlson in Switzerland, Nick, is that not one of the coolest things you've ever heard? Okay, so what number are you as a master model railroader?
525.
What year did you get that?
Boy, let's see, 2000 and I don't know, 12, 13, something like that.
So recently, within the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question that I try to ask everybody because I've become fascinated by this question since doing the podcast. And you're and you should know this. You should be searching out this answer.
Okay.
If you don't know it, you should have made it your quest already to understand it. As the at-large North American director, what is it? What is it about this hobby? What is it about model railroading that propels it forward? Why is it that people enjoy this hobby so much?
Well, I think it's because it was a couple of different things. I think it's a little bit of nostalgia, but I think more than that, it's a very challenging, hobby to people who want to learn things, and that kind of excites me. I'm also the manager of the Modeling with the Masters program at the National Convention, and I taught for 30 or 40 years, and before I did modeling with the masters, I'd never gone into a class where all the students want to be there. And that's kind of an interesting concept where everybody who you're talking to wants to learn something from you, and every single one of them there can teach you something too. And that's, to me, what's really neat about the hobbies. There's always new stuff to learn.
Yeah, that's a very cool thing. So yeah, so modeling with the masters was started by our buddy Clark Cooning,
That's correct.
and so you're the manager of it now.
As of about, yeah, Clark gave it to me about 6 months ago.
Well, there you go. But that's very cool. So there is something about this hobby that I don't think anybody will ever identify. But that's a very good point about, the people want to learn. It's something. This sounds incredibly. What's the word? Incredibly vain, incredibly boastful, incredibly something. But I'm beginning to feel, after doing this podcast for 5 years, that I feel like model railroaders have they just have a better sense of who they are, because they enjoy the hobby. They don't care what people think. They enjoy learning. They just enjoy the challenge. I think it's just the people in it just seem to be, every person that I meet just seems to be more interesting than the last almost.
Oh, I agree. And every person I've ever met in model railroading has always taught me something. And that's the neat part.
Yeah. Now, just before we go on, I think, Bruce, in fairness, I should clarify that every person seems more interesting than the last except for Spoon. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, I would agree with that. Too bad, Mike.
Spoon is our lovable regular contributor to our podcast. He's a locomotive engineer for the Canadian National Railroad in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and he is extremely giving of his information and wanting to help people understand railroading even more than they do now. So it's very cool.
Can't beat that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's very good with the barbecue and the grill.
Yes.
And he sweats more than any other man on the planet.
He was an amazing amount of sweat came off him at the barbecue.
That's a talent.
Yeah. So he's kind of batting for the cycle.
Yeah.
Okay. So all right. So, you get married, you find a house, you start. Like, what was the first real model railroad that you started or had visions of or whatever?
Well, when I first started out, of course, I was a baby professor, and at that time I was at the University of Tulsa in Oklahoma, and I had sort of a spare bedroom that I could fool around in. And I had a small, I guess, 3 foot by 7 foot N scale layout that was Great Northern and Northern Pacific at the time, because I went to the University of Montana back before the big transition over to Burlington Northern. I saw a lot of Great Northern and Northern Pacific stuff go through Missoula, Montana, and that just grabbed me at the time. So I modeled in both N and HO at one time or another, but at that time, N scale, an N scale layout, Great Northern.
So this would have been probably the late 70s?
This would have been, late 70s,
okay.
Early 80s. Yeah.
I have a question for you about N scale. How did it ever survive? Because back then, the only way it would run is if it went backwards at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's for sure. Actually, the first Atlas RS3 came out just about the time that I started, and it was so smooth running, I was absolutely flabbergasted. I could sit and watch it buzz around the layout at incredibly slow speeds, and it was so entertaining because everything else just did the Lindy hop all the time. So
yeah. So is there some place people can go and explore all about you? Like, you have a Facebook page or anything?
Yeah, I have a Facebook page, and if they do a Google search, it depends on how they do it. If they do Jim Gore Model Railroad in Google, they'll find one set of information, and if they just Google Jim Gore, they'll wind up finding all about my professional career too. So
all right, so I'm going to go Jim Gore Model Railroad, and I found out your National Model Railroad page. Is it Chili Line?
That's correct. Well, actually, it's the Jemison Rio Grande, which is a fictitious subdivision of the old Chili Lines.
Okay, and what do you have it on Facebook as?
The Jemez, Jemez.
Oh man, this is going to be painful.
The Jemez Mountains are the mountain range behind the city of Los Alamos.
Okay, so spell that J-A.
J-E.
Oh my goodness gracious, yeah.
Jemez.
M-E-Z.
And
Rio
Grande.
Okay, well, Rio Grande I can do. See, Rio Grande with the
Correct.
E.
With the E.
Yeah. Kit Basher's Scratch Medal of Model Railroading is no. Let me see. Jim Gore. No, there's model. See, I can't find it. Why can't I find it? Why can't I find it, Bruce? What am I doing?
Do you have it as the
Jemez, and use probably an ampersand, not the and.
No. Oh, okay. The ampersand. I like how he thinks he knows that I would know what that is.
Of course you do.
Yeah, you might want to talk to Bruce before you get too excited. There I say Ron Kleist 44 friends like this. J-N-R-G.
JNRG. That's it.
There it is.
Okay. So it's J-N-R-G. There you go. All right. So it's not what he said, folks. It's just simply J-N-R-G.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember. I created it so long ago. I don't remember.
All right. Well, get over there. There's some beautiful pictures here. So you have an ON3 layout yet, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay.
Mhm.
So after that N scale layout, what did you do?
Well, then when I moved from Oklahoma, I went to Tennessee for a while, and in Tennessee I started modeling in HO, and I modeled the Northern Pacific and the Great Northern again, and moved from there to Florida for a while for the first time, down to Naples, and then was at Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia for about 10 years, and I had a house there and had a big HO layout. And when I found out I was going back to Florida, I decided now's the time to make the transition to something that I can actually see now with my old and weak eyes, and went to ON30.
Okay, and that's a cool scale to be in ON30 because there's a lot of neat stuff to buy, and it's a lot of the detail you can do in O scale is exciting, really.
I agree. That's the fun part for me is super detailing just about everything.
He's a spectacular modeler, isn't he?
He does have a bit of talent, yes, sir.
So how big is your layout now?
It's actually quite small, about 12 by 16.
Right.
So it's a relatively small layout, and it's if I have an operating session, it's one northbound and one southbound, and there's only one passing siding.
Yeah, but that's cool. We don't need big layouts all the time, though, do we?
Oh no, I agree.
No, all you need is something you can go and have a couple hours of fun with.
Absolutely right. And that's why I keep reminding people all the time when they get too serious about this. It's a hobby.
Yeah, we're playing with trains.
That's right. Please, it's a hobby.
Well, that's a cool subject to talk about because I think what this podcast has been. I mean, I know it's not for everybody, but I mean, we talk model railroading, but it's kind of like what you would do at a club. I mean, you talk model railroading and you talk everything else at the same time. It's more spontaneous.
Oh, absolutely.
We
Yep.
try to make it as spontaneous and fun-loving as we can.
Yeah, I agree.
So how did you decide to become a master model railroader?
Well, it was kind of interesting. I got interested in.
Hang on, Jim, just before
Okay.
you go forward. It's kind of standard here on the podcast that we decide whether stories are interesting or not.
Oh, okay.
You tell it, and then we judge it later.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, I was reading a newsletter from the Spokane, Portland, and Seattle Model Railroad Society, and they had a special issue on maintenance of way cars, and I became fascinated with them, and I said, gee, I sure would like to have those on my layout. And then I discovered that nobody makes maintenance of way cars. You got to build them yourself. So over a period of about 3 or 4 years, I scratch built an 8-car maintenance of way train. And the guy who was in charge of the AP program in the NMRA said, well, you got enough awards to wallpaper your house. Why don't you apply for this thing called Master Modeler for Cars? And I said, oh, okay, whatever that is. And I signed up for it. And they sent me the certificate. And I thought, well, that's pretty impressive. And immediately forgot all about it.
Right. Well, when did you get involved in the NMRA?
Oh, gosh, back in the
Navy days or shortly thereafter?
Shortly after. Yeah,
Okay.
Shortly after. In the 80s.
All right.
And I've been a member ever since, except with the exception of 2 years when I just decided I wasn't interested in the NMRA for a while and then got back into it. But when I moved to Florida, I met a master model railroader, a guy named Jim Beatty, and he just hounded me about becoming a master model railroader. And over a period about, I'd say 3 more years, I got all the other certificates.
Wow. So Cars was your first, and that launched you.
Cars was my first. That's correct. Yeah.
So which certificates do you hold?
Well, Cars and motive power.
Okay.
And structures and scenery.
Right.
And electrical. And association volunteer. And association official. And author.
Wow.
So, what have you? You've had articles published in various magazines.
Mm-hmm. Yep. My layout's been in Model Railroader. It's been in Railroad Model Hobbyist. It's been in O-Scale Trains, in O-Gauge Railroading, in actually the SN3 Journal, and let's see, Narrow Gauge and Shortline Gazette. I love that one.
The 0-30 annual or no?
Not been in the annual, no.
Not yet. Okay.
Nope. And actually, the most unusual one was in Narrow Gauge Down Under, an Australian journal.
Oh, there you go.
So, what would be? This is probably out of order. This question is out of order. But I would imagine by now you've pretty much figured out there isn't a whole lot of order. Period. What is it that drew you? What do you think that draws you to? What is the most rewarding of all the things you've done? With the writing and having your, published articles and all the things. What is it that you think has been the most rewarding? Because you're quite involved in the hobby, which is, like I say, I've got a different question. But what is it that you find to be the most rewarding of all of that?
Oh, that's a tough one. I still think probably the most rewarding part of the hobby is the fellowship of other modelers. Because my modeling improves when I talk to other people about how they do something and what they want to do, and it's always a challenge. I used model railroading as a way to relax from my research projects and my professional publications and things like that, and so to me that was an escape. And the improvement of the modeling skill was really somebody else's contribution, I think. It certainly wasn't my own doing. I inherited it from somebody else.
Yeah, like what's been the most rewarding is the fellowship of the other people that you've met, and
right.
And what they are willing to, people. The fact that there's no secrets very much in the hobby.
Not very much. I haven't met anybody who won't tell me how they did something when it comes to model railroading.
Yeah, well, Bruce won't really tell me how he keeps track of all the electrons from our mail, but
got to keep some secrets, man. but it's interesting Jim says that, because we've talked to a lot of other people through this course of this podcast, and the fellowship seems to be the big common denominator. That it's a hobby. You're meeting people that are like-minded, and you have a lot of fun. You're no longer the outsider. There's somebody there, and we've talked this too with the advent of social media and everything else. It's opened up the whole hobby to a lot of people that you would have never ever met before. Like we've met guys in Australia, we met guys in the States, over in England.
Sure.
It's a worldwide hobby, and it's a worldwide fellowship.
Yep, I agree. That's the fun part.
And as far as I'm concerned, social media is going to make the hobby explode. I absolutely think the hobby is going to explode.
Oh yeah.
Well, I think you're right in a lot of respects. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, it's connecting us all. I personally believe, and I have no way of verifying this, but when Al Gore invented the internet, I think he did it specifically for model railroading.
Could be. I've told him about it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. You're modeling in N scale and HO.
Uh-huh.
What got you into ON30?
Actually, I bought an ON30 set to go around our Christmas tree. And my wife said, "Gee, that's a neat size." And I looked at it going around the Christmas tree for a while, and I said, we're about to move to Florida. What a great opportunity to sell all the HO stuff and just make the big transition all at once.
Well, there you go.
And so I did. And haven't regretted it yet.
Have you? Are all your locomotives pretty? Bachmann, I guess, is the #1 producer of ON30.
Bachmann is, but I have a few MMI engines as well.
What's MMI?
Oh gosh, Mountain Model Industries.
Okay.
It's an offshoot of Precision Scale.
Okay.
And they put out a series of ON3 and ON30 models of all the DNR-GW engines, and I've got a K27 and a C19, and I've scratch built a couple of little critters as well. So,
is that hard to do, scratch building any kind of a locomotive?
No, not really. Actually, I think because I model so much in paper, that modeling in paper, where you learn to layer paper to give it dimension, makes it very easy to model an engine, because you just do it in plastic and you layer the plastic in the same way.
Okay.
And at least the critters that I built, that's how I built them.
All right, so we better get into that, or I think Bruce will end up shooting me if we don't get into this thing about the paper modeling. So, other than your Facebook page, is there any place we would find out about this? Like, I don't really even understand what we're talking about, so Bruce, you're going to have to help me ask the right questions here.
Okay.
So, what exactly, when we're talking paper modeling, like I know styrene, I know wood.
Mm-hmm.
So, what exactly are we talking about with paper modeling?
Well, paper is just an advanced form of wood, and I always tell people that I've heard of the primitive modeling stuff like wood and things like that, but paper is just compressed wood, and so you ought to be able to maneuver paper around just like you do wood. The only thing is it's very thin, but it has a lot of tensile strength that people don't really understand until you put something together in a kit made out of paper or out of cardstock. The Europeans have been using cardstock structures forever, so the Australians.
Yeah.
And for some reason we abandoned it back in the 60s, and it's just come back now with a couple of companies in the U.S. that build or put together paper kits.
Yeah, because back in the 50s and early 60s, modeling with paper, they would have been calling it Strathmore board at the time.
Strathmore, right?
It was big. Jack worked it quite a bit with that. John Allen's famous Gore engine house was cardstock modeling. So it's a medium that's been around. Like Jim says, the Europeans have embraced. They kind of have a different approach. Their kits are a little different, but it's one that's been discovered again. And I think probably it really started coming around. I think the fellow's name who started was it Paper Creek?
Paper Creek. Yep.
He started fooling around with the editing software on computers and said, "Hey, look at this."
Yep. Yeah, I started off with Paper Creek models also, and built a few of them, and they were sort of a limited inventory of paper models from Paper Creek before they went out of business. And about that time, I'd heard of this group of guys called, Clever Models. They were called Clever Brothers back then. but one of them was a designer, one of them's an engineer, and they started making these paper models. And I ordered one because there was a kit that looked sort of southwestern-ish, and I thought I could convert it to looking more southwestern, so I ordered the kit. And this envelope arrives in the mail, no instructions, just all the pieces. And so I fooled around with it, tried to figure out how you go about building a model with no instructions, and it was an absolute disaster. So I emailed them, Dave Michnikowski and Tom Michnikowski, and I said, you guys, this was worthless. I couldn't build it. It made no sense to me without instructions. And Dave wrote back to me and said, well, we're sorry, we'll give you your money back. And I said, no, don't give me my money back. Teach me how to do it. And so over a period of about 6 weeks, Tom and Dave coached me through another kit. And then I've been test building for them for about, almost a decade now. So a lot of the paper models that you see on the JNRG webpage, there's a tutorial on building a couple of different structures. They aren't available so far, but I've built them just as test builds. So,
yeah, and for those who think that paper modeling, they're not real models and stuff. If you get on the Clever Models website, you can download some freebies, and you can see how complex there's some easy ones and there's some pretty complex ones. I've got their version of the John Allen Endage House, and it is a complex model.
Yeah, I did the test. I did the test build on that one, and it was 6 months. It took me a good 6 months. Yeah.
So they're in the say they're not real kits. Well, they definitely are real kits.
Oh, absolutely. And you can detail them and weather them just like any other kit.
Yes. And I've seen them at some of the shows around here. That if you're looking at them from 3 or 4 feet away, it's difficult to tell that they're printed and not a full 3D model. Full relief model. Yeah,
I agree. And actually, you can give them just about all the relief that any.
True enough. Yes. Well. Yes.
Yep. So the idea of these paper models is that the sides are printed on paper, and then you somehow construct it that way.
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So now you said the JNRG website. Is there a website, or are you just talking about?
Excuse me, I meant the Facebook page.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So on there somewhere there is there's plans or something for.
Well, there are tutorials on building the coal tower at Chama, as I recall.
Yeah.
Yep. And my latest project is on there as well, which is a neat little diorama for main 2-foot and narrow gauge and some things like that.
Okay. So Jim, you have to try to understand. I'm basically dumber than a stick of butter. So where would because other people will want to see this, because believe it or not, there's actually people listening to us. Somewhere we figure somewhere we have between 5,000 and 10,000 regular listeners. So there's people.
That's great.
So there's people that want to know how they're going to want to find this on your Facebook page. So do we know, Bruce, how we would do that?
Just start scrolling down.
That's right. Just scroll back.
Yeah, and he's got you get down there and you'll start running into him, and then you can scroll back further and start. Yeah, so some of Jim's tutorials are back in 2014. Looking at one, the coaling towers, obviously more recent than that, but they're interesting. They're a good way to go through. The coaling tower starts in 2015. He had like a hotel or something in 2014.
Oh yeah, that's the Union Hotel.
The
That's
Union
right.
Hotel. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, this paper modeling is that all the details are printed on paper.
That's correct.
And you build it from there. Okay, so now I'm confused. You guys are going to have to help me. Why is this so difficult to do? Like you say that these models were hard to put together. What's so difficult about putting paper together?
Well, it's putting together in the proper order that you get a 3-dimensional kit out of it. For example, if you've got a side with windows, you have to build up each window. And for example, a window in cardstock may be 6 or 7 layers. And so you've got to cut out the opening of the window and then build up the window with the frame, with the sills, with if you've got a double sash, you got 2 separate sashes made out of cardstock, and you layer these on top of each other. So it may actually be 6 or 7 layers. And actually, in thickness, they're much closer to scale than, say, even the plastic Grant Line or Tichy parts and things like that.
Okay, so there is some 3D to it because
absolutely,
because of the layering. Okay,
and we mentioned complex. Some of the kits are very complex and like a high degree of difficulty. Some are not so much. It's like taking a Tichy kit at one end, or if you're in aircraft modeling, you're taking a simple monogram kit you buy, or looking at some of the Tamiya's with 400 and 500 parts type
Oh,
thing.
yes.
So it's arranged that there. If you get on the Clever Models website and go to their free downloads page, you can download several there. Some are straightforward, easy to do. You can get your feet wet in it, and some are a little more complex, and they say, yeah, this is fun, and then you start ordering stuff from them.
Yep, you do.
And so do their kits now come with more instructions, or?
Well, they've started to put together sort of instructions. They've at least put together exploded views and plane views of the finished model, which is nice, what they never had before. And by this time, I don't look at the instructions anyway. I just build it the way I want.
Yeah.
But if you think about layering, I like to tell people that I put together a traveling crane, and the block and tackle are 32 layers of cardstock.
Wow.
So,
yeah, so I remember seeing that on your webpage or your Facebook page. Yeah.
Holy mackerel! So it's just a matter of you keep layering it up, but on each layer is printed something to represent the outside of the model. So like where there's a clapboard side, it's already printed, but from like you say, from a distance and not a very large distance, it looks at all the world to be a 3D model.
Yeah,
That's
but then some of the models where it's like board and batten siding, you can actually have the base layer, and then there's another layer cut out to glue on. That is the battens.
The battens, correct.
So now you're building up 3D texture on the model.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Your phone's ringing there, Jim. If that's Hollywood calling.
No, that was actually my cat doing a fax. So.
Oh, okay. Well, if that's Hollywood calling, take a message, would you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So these Clever Model guys, should we interview these guys, or are they going to?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Tom is an interesting guy to talk to. He plays a wonderful fretless bass, and in a couple of different bands in Chicago. And Dave is interesting in his own right. He does a lot of the test building for Tom. Tom is a designer.
Okay, and they are brothers, or you said, or
they are brothers. Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, we won't hold that against them.
And now that Jim said their name, I know how to pronounce it. I was close. I was close in my mind.
How is it pronounced?
Michnikowski.
Michnikowski. There's way too many letters in there. That's like that's like our bud
Olszewski.
Yeah, that's our bud Ed Olszewski. It's spelled Olszewski, and it's Olszewski, and he insists it's Olszewski. And there's
Olszewski. Yeah.
And I keep going. There's no chess in there, buddy. You're dreaming. How do you say this name again?
Michnikowski.
Michnikowski. Holy cow! It's MIECZNIKOWSKI,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just like it sounds.
Yeah, just like it sounds.
Although when you think about it, the CZ is the ch sound, like
yeah.
Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, exactly.
That's correct.
Okay, from now on, I'll start calling you Bruce Wilson.
No, I'll say but I have to add a Z in my name for that. So yeah, whatever. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see how much time have we killed here. Oh man, we killed a bunch of time. So, all right. So, okay. Any more questions about the paper modeling, Bruce?
No, but I will add that we'll throw some links up for this interview, and the Clever Models website has all sorts of good tips and tricks, FAQs on how to build stuff together. It's if you're interested in it, I'll look at that. Grab one of their freebies, play with it, and have some fun. The beauty of a paper model, and I can attest to this, that if you screw something up,
You just print it
just
again.
print another one off. She's right there. And when we're talking paper, you should say it's not like just normal 8.5 by 11 paper you'd put in your
That's correct.
printer. It's the heavier cardstock, like
It's 100-pound cardstock.
100-pound or 120, 80-pound, that type of stuff.
And
I use 100-pound, 110-pound cardstock most of the time, but sometimes I get down to 65-pound cardstock if I'm building an HO or N.
Yeah.
And so when they send you a kit, do they send you the printed pieces on cardstock?
No, they send me the files and I print them out myself.
Oh, these guys are brilliant.
If you buy a file from the website, they send you a download link, and you download the PDF.
Right.
Wow. These guys,
And you can build as many as you want. They're there years forever.
Yeah.
They don't expire or anything like that.
these guys are brilliant. That's what I ought to do. Is I ought to start doing a podcast where, on the Patreon side, I just send you a mic. I just send you a link, and you start talking to yourself.
Perfect.
Send me $5 a month and knock yourself out.
Great.
Yeah. So, and the other thing on their website is, besides the kits you can buy, they do have, just if you're kind of into rolling your own and get along, they do have textures you can buy too.
Right. They have a whole
Great.
inventory of textures, and I've scratch built quite a few things. The most famous of which, I guess, I don't know if it's on the JNRG Facebook site or not, was something called the Diamond Bar, which was a place in Como, Colorado. And I always think it's kind of funny because if you Google the Diamond Bar, about half of the pictures say, "Oh, a nice old church," and it was a brothel.
Perfect.
Perfect.
So which one?
Now,
Go ahead, Bruce.
okay. No, I'm just saying that you also do the paper modeling with the masters. So
That's correct. As a matter of fact, if you want to go to St. Louis, we'll have a session on modeling with cardstock at Modeling with the Masters.
right,
St. Louis.
and you develop yourself the model for that, or do you work with the
No, I work with Clever Models.
clever models? You can develop a particular special model for modeling with the masters.
Sometimes we do. Sometimes I just take one off the website or off of my
Okay.
inventory, and that way they can see what they've got. And usually what I tell them to do at the end of the day, because it's about a 5-hour session, is I say, okay, now take your model and step on it, and then go and get the file and do it over again and do it right this time. So, the first time is always a challenge, and after that you get to learn a little more finesse.
Well, that doesn't sound like much fun stepping on it after you build it.
Well, it's paper.
It's paper, and it's forgiving. Like it's not like a craftsman kit, like a fine skills miniature kit or something.
That's right. You can build it again and
You
again.
can build it again and again, and like, oops, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, let's print another one and have at her again. So
That's right.
So I've downloaded the O-scale fuel tank and oil tank. So what
Yes.
what do you use for glue? Like, how do you glue it together?
I use combinations of various things. I use mostly CA glue, and because I'm kind of a cheap guy, I don't buy the fancy CA glues. I just use Gorilla medium viscosity CA, and that will do for most of the parts. The only other trick that you have, of course, if you cut through something that's printed, there's an edge that's white. And so you have to paint that edge white, and that takes up more time sometimes than the building, is to get rid of all those little white edges. And it's a little disconcerting at first when you put 4 walls together and all the interior walls are white, and you don't feel like you've really built something until you put the roof on it and it's all colored. But the edges have to be painted as well, and so I use acrylics, and sometimes I use artists' pens and things like that to paint the edge.
Now, Lionel, you said you downloaded the crates. If you go on that freebie page and you'll look and see it,
interlocking tower.
just above that, it says important. Open this folder first, and then general construction information. Those 2 folders will give you pretty much everything you need to know to get started to start building your crates.
Okay. Well, I downloaded the fuel tank, so
They're
Fuel
pretty,
tanks, same way.
they're
Yep.
pretty cool too.
Okay, so let's tell. We've talked enough about these guys, so we better give these guys the our buddy Stephen Hayworth there in Des Plaines, Illinois. He always wants us to put up the link, which is kind of cute, thinking that I'm organized enough to do that. However, Stephen, if you go to clevermodels.squarespace.com, that will get you to their homepage. Or probably if you just Google Clever Models. I'm going to do that right now and see what happens. I'm going to put in.
If you Google Clever Models, you get a whole bunch of pictures of my models, but clevermodels.net.
Yes.
There it is, clevermodels.net. Well, it's not so bad getting a bunch of pictures of your models, is it?
No.
I don't think so. You seem a little concerned about that, Jim.
Well, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. So
and
good.
And I do have sit on my computer at work a whole bunch of links to go with this podcast. So when the time comes, you check the Modeler's Life Facebook page or the Modeler's Life website, and some links will be there.
So how will you know when to put the links up?
Because somebody will tell me when they're going to post the podcast, and I'll go, "Oh."
Do you seriously think that's going to happen?
It happened the last time I had to post links.
Yeah, once it happened.
Yeah, well, true. or I'll be watching and say, "Oh, I guess I better put the links
There
up."
you go.
There's the more likely scenario.
That's the more likely scenario, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, my phone will ding at 3 a.m. going, "Oh, okay."
There you go. Exactly. All right. Okay. So clevermodels.net, Stephen Hayworth. That's it. Clevermodels.net. This would be a perfect project. Oh, you know who we should get to build one of these is our Kaylee Zhang, who single-handedly builds Pratt and Whitney turbine engines.
They sound a lot like that. It's
That's her spin-off company.
All right, now Jim, we're going to get to a whole different subject here. So tighten up your chin strap just a little tighter here.
Got it.
We're going to talk about the NMRA.
Okay.
So what exactly does the at-large North American director do?
Well, that's a good question too. There are actually quite a few directors. There's a director for each district, and then there's an at-large North American, and there's an at-large world director. And I think the titles don't really mean anything as far as responsibility. It's just a matter of creating some diversity of representation and to sit on the board to make decisions about NMRA policy and activity and things like that. In my case, what I'm in charge of right now that I think is exciting is the partnership program, which allows NMRA members to get a discount through the various manufacturers who are partners in the NMRA partnership program. And the thing that we like to point out is if you don't like the dues to the NMRA, with about 3 or 4 purchases in a year, you've paid for your NMRA membership by going through the partners program. So,
who came up with that idea?
Actually, my predecessor, a guy named Peter Youngblood, came up with that. And it's been in existence now for about 5 years or so.
Okay,
yeah, actually 4 or 5 years, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, what you said earlier, you left the NMRA. What drew you back into it?
Actually, getting into an area where there was an NMRA division that was active, and that was actually here in West Florida. Amazingly enough, there just was not an active one in Georgia that I could get to. I would have to have driven about 125 miles to get to the active division in Georgia. And so because there wasn't any action going on, I kept on thinking to myself, well, what am I paying for this for? And I talked to the president then, a guy named Alan Pollock, and Alan Pollock sort of convinced me that maybe I ought to give it another shot. I did, and I've been a member ever since.
Alan Pollock's a hard-working dude. He did a lot for the NMRA. So why does the NMRA, why are they convinced that the average age of a model railroader is 102 years old?
Well, I think it comes from a limited sample size, and that's the NMRA membership more than anything else. I don't think that they honestly believe that. They may print that statistic because it's part of their surveys, and it's only a survey of the membership. And younger people, younger modelers don't join as much until they get to a point in their lives where they become serious about the hobby, I guess. And then they join. And so that sort of boosts the population that they sample to the high end.
That makes sense. Actually, that makes sense. Because the thing that, okay, so do you think the hobby's growing or dying?
I don't see it dying. I don't know if I see it growing or not, but if you go to the big national train shows and things like that, you see hundreds of young people at those shows. And if it's like most of us, it grabs us and then it goes away and then it comes back. So I figure all those young kids that I see at the national train show and things like that, and we usually have maybe 4 or 5 in any given Modeling with the Masters hands-on clinic. We get people who are 20 and under.
Right.
And they're, I know that they're going to lose interest for a while because they've got some other things to do until they get to be about 30, 35. And then once they become a little bit more stabilized in their lives, they drift back.
Okay.
And it's usually because they want to show off to their kids.
They want to show off what?
Their trains.
Oh, okay.
Put the trains under the tree.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. All right. Okay. So, all right. So, so much of the youth in the hobby, like we talked to a lot of people that are in their 30s and 20s, and it's a staggering amount, actually. I think the hobby's actually going to explode, and we're all going to be covered in model railroad goo.
That'd be fun.
I think the hobby's absolutely going to explode because so many people are able to connect through YouTube and social media. And how are we gonna? What is it you would like to tell people that the NMRA provides that they can't get via NMRA or via the YouTube or social media?
Well, the thing that the NMRA provides is an opportunity for you to be more active in the hobby and for you to gain a lot more friends in the hobby. I think that's the greatest thing that it provides. I mean, the NMRA was established to create standards for manufacturers and things like that, and to create some common ground among model railroaders, and conformance and standards is still one of the big things that the NMRA does. But I think the more important thing is that it provides a whole bunch of new people to meet and see and learn from. And that's something that not belonging to the NMRA gives you sort of a restricted vision. There's certainly local clubs and things like that, and they're great, and everybody at one time or another belongs to the local clubs. But the NMRA just gives you a different group of people to meet, and you can meet with them on a monthly, annual basis if you want.
Right.
And,
I think
a bunch of friends I see just once a year.
Yeah. Is it safe to say one of the things the NMRA does really well is get people together, like with the divisional meets, regional conventions, and that type of thing?
Absolutely. Half of the modelers in Florida I would never have met had it not been for regional and divisional meetings. And boy, they've taught me a whole bunch of neat stuff. And that's tremendous advantage to me because my skills improve.
Right. And okay, now getting on to that, when did you decide going along in the NMRA to start getting involved and giving back? And, this is one of these processions, I've been involved in. At some point you think, I want to help others. And so at what point did you go, I should probably run for division or regional director or something like that?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I volunteered to give a number of clinics, and I think that probably got me going, is because I gave clinics and people would talk to me and I would talk to them and teach them what I knew, and they taught me different ways to do the same thing I was doing, and it was either easier or more difficult, and that's sort of what got me going. And the fact that I could do some teaching to a group of people who wanted to learn, that was an interesting experience. And I think that got me involved. And as I was getting going towards this master model railroader, the guy who was in charge of the AP program came to me one day and he said, "You do realize that if you become a master model railroader, I'm going to pass the mantle of being the AP director over to you." And I said, "Oh." and indeed, I've been the AP director for the Sunshine region for about 6-7 years now.
Oh, congratulations.
And that's what sort of got me involved. And now I'm having to teach people how to do things and how to fill out the paperwork and not to be intimidated by it and everything else, and giving talks about becoming a master model railroader in addition to cardstock modeling and the other things that I do. And then Clark got me involved in modeling with the masters, and Peter Youngblood, when he decided he didn't want to be on the board anymore, called Tony Custer, who was in charge of the nomination committee, and all of a sudden one night I got a phone call from Tony Custer, and he said, "Guess what? You should run for at-large North American director." And I said, "What's that?" And they told me.
Okay.
So
here's the loaded question. AP. I've been involved, so I know what it's about. You know what it's about. The AP is just a bunch of elitist guys are trying to show off, blah 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 blah.
Well,
what's your answer to that?
Well, there are a few of those around, but one of the things that people don't realize, I guess, is when you become a master model railroader, you sign a document with the NMRA that says your primary job is to teach other people how to get there.
Yes. And
so the AP program may be a bunch of elitists, and you're going to meet them, and you're going to meet them in every profession. It does not just the hobby. And elitists are elitists, and there's nothing you can do about it. My father had a much more colorful phrase about them, but at any rate, you just have to take that, because the majority of the people who are master model railroaders will give you the shirt off their backs to teach you how to do things.
Yeah,
and it's a merit badge program, if you want to call it that. Yeah. It is, and the thing about it is you have to look at it as an opportunity to learn and to develop new skills. And if you never become a master model railroader, doesn't matter. No. You learn some new stuff.
Yeah, but I might take getting involved is that you do it, you will become a better modeler.
Absolutely.
Involved.
Yep, absolutely. And you discover that you can do things you never thought you could do. And I never thought I could build a piece of rolling motive power, or rolling stock for that matter, from scratch. But then all of a sudden now I'm doing it all the time, because I can do it because I can do it the way I want. And that was what other people taught me how to do.
Right. And so both you guys are passionate about the AP program, which is very, very cool. So how will people, if they feel like they want to try it, like where would they turn? Who would they turn to? Who's somebody they could turn to for some sort of guidance?
Well, every region has an AP director, and I have people in our region who call me all the time and say, "Well, how do I do this? How do I do that?" And it's my job to tell them how to do that. And there is a preliminary award that's called the Golden Spike Award. And if you look at the requirements of the Golden Spike, it's sort of build your first model railroad. And it's going to be simple, and it's going to be a 4x8, and it's going to have some track, and it's going to have a little bit of scenery. It doesn't have to be complex, but it gives you a feel for what it's like to win or to get an award from the NMRA. It's signed by all the nice people and things like that, and it's something you can hang on your wall, and it says, "I'm starting." And
do you have your Golden Spike?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that's the one thing. If you're NMR, you cannot get your Golden Spike.
That's correct. I got mine on the way. When the two judges came to judge the scenery on my layout, the guy looked on my wall and says, "You don't have your Golden Spike." And I said, "Nope." And he said, "Well, we'll give it to you on the way right now." So
okay,
I do have it.
Yeah. So what do you say to people? Go ahead, Bruce.
No, I was going to say the other thing, Jim's talking about, he'll tell you how to get involved. But one thing I found out when I started getting interested was at one of the regional conventions, and Pete Moffat and Clark Kooning were there. So I'm asking them about how to get involved. So it's probably the best way you can start is get involved in doing some of the judging.
That's
and
true.
I said, okay. And because then you get an idea of what the judges are looking for, how they're evaluating the models, and what you can do to, score higher in the evaluation. And that's, I've done judging a number of years, and I think that's really helped by understanding what the evaluation process is. And
I agree.
basically you do neat work, and that's it. You can't be sloppy, but it gives you a whole better understanding rather than taking your first model thinking you've done a great job and entering it in the contest and get like 32 on it or something like that.
Oh, I think that's about
And-
what I got the first one I entered. Something like that.
Okay,
I
so
got 88 on my first.
I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So, what do you guys say to the people that say it turns model railroading into a competition? Because for a lot of people,
Well-
it's very hard to take the criticism. They just want to have fun.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
And there's no reason, there's nobody who forces you to go into the contests, and you don't actually have to go into a contest. You can become a master model railroader without ever entering a single contest. You can have a couple of master model railroaders come over to your house and evaluate your models one-on-one.
Right.
And they can sit there and talk to you. How did you do this? How did you do that? There's a certain advantage to that, for example.
Oh, yeah, certainly. I think, my
And-
thought is that it's probably easier to have your models evaluated that way than in the contest
contest.
situation where the judges are looking
Yep.
at 30 models in whatever time they have.
And as a matter of fact, on Thursday, I guess, Thursday, I've got two gentlemen coming over to my house with their models, and another friend of mine who's a judge will come down to my house, and we'll sit there and evaluate about a half a dozen models.
Yeah.
So, we
Yeah,
do
and
that all the time.
Yeah, and it's not a contest per se. It's I think of more of a self-help program. The only person you're competing against is yourself, and
Right,
by
exactly.
getting involved, you're going to push yourself to become better. It's the same thing as if you're playing golf. You're playing golf. You want to get better. So what are you going to do? You're going to practice more. You're going to take lessons. You're going to learn how to be better. It's not necessarily you're competing against anybody. You're competing against yourself to make yourself better.
Right.
Oh, that's a good way of looking at it.
It is. And entering the contests are separate events, really, from the AP program or from becoming a master model railroader. Some people like to enter the contests. They don't mind the criticism. Some do. And that's fine. There's no requirement that you enter a contest at all to ever become a master model railroader.
All right. Well, then my only thing is we got to take the NMRA into the next century. And one of our buddies, one of our friends who ran for worldwide at-large director, I think he finished second with 800 and some odd votes. But our buddy Gordy Robinson from Scotland, who represents typically the next wave, the next generation of model railroaders. He's in his mid-30s.
I know Gordy well.
Yeah, and he came up with what I think is the single greatest idea for the new world of the NMRA, which is a virtual region. Go ahead.
That's an interesting idea. Mm-hmm.
Which is basically, it's a region that exists on the internet, where people can, from all over the world, if you live in Georgia and you're 135 miles from the nearest meet, you can be part of the NMRA by being part of this virtual region.
Well, there are little bits and pieces of that going on right now, and have been over the last 5 years or so. I've given virtual clinics to other regions, as a matter of fact, and to some regions or some of the divisions up north, up around Tallahassee, that I don't really want to drive the 5 hours to get to, for example. And I can give a virtual clinic. And so it's going on. But as an organized entity in the NMRA, that would be an interesting idea.
It's a great idea, and it's our buddy Gordy Robinson came up with that idea. Way to go, Gordy. I think it is the best. So because somehow we got to get the NMRA to step over the chasm into the new world.
Yeah, I think the Michiana division. They're kind of pushing the virtual thing with the what they do in was it the EduTrain program?
EduTrain, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Because
it may come faster than you think, but unfortunately, very large organizations tend to move very slow.
yes,
And when you've got an organization of, say, 16 to 18,000 people with one full-time employee and everybody else being a volunteer, volunteers can back away anytime they want. And that causes a certain amount of angst among all the membership, but that happens.
Yeah, and I understand that, Jim. And I mean, we've never met, but we've obviously could be friends, obviously, from this conversation. And the only counterpoint I would make to that is you're talking to a 65-year-old guy who decided one day, I wonder what it would be like to do a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And now I have people all over the world that are connected, and we've created a community simply by doing it through the internet and utilizing social media. And while it may be hard for the NMRA to move forward at a slow pace, at some point you have to kind of suck it up and go, we've been driving here in the slow lane for the last 3 hours, and there seems to be everybody else is going past us. Yeah. So maybe, in fact, we are.
Yeah, I think that's happening behind the scenes, but I don't think that the NMRA is very forthcoming about those plans, and that's nothing that I can do individually about.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think things like that are happening that you probably would be surprised about. So.
Yeah, that said, on Facebook, there's the NMRA AP page that wasn't started by the NMRA, but it's started by somebody else who's interested in the AP, and that is a very active Facebook page that people are asking questions all the time. And Frank Cook, who is in charge of the AP, he's often on there saying, "Here's." You get lots of people, I think you can do this. No. And Frank will say, no, here's the way it is. You do this, you do that. And Frank is very good about answering questions about the AP on the Facebook page. And it's a very active group, and there's a lot of good advice. And people they're posting there, okay, I'm finally working on this. What do I need to do? And how do I do the paperwork for dispatcher? And somebody will throw up examples or explain how they do that. So it for certain parts of it, it's there.
And the NMRA Facebook page the same way.
Yeah.
It's again started by others, but now it's kind of taken off to be a sort of an active group.
Well, I'm going to vote for Gordy Robinson as director of the virtual region.
Well, that sounds like a good idea.
Excellent.
Okay. Have we got any more questions, Bruce? I don't think we barely even skimmed the surface.
Oh, we could probably talk to Jim again about a whole bunch more, but we're running a little short of time on this one.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, we discovered that people can only listen to me talk for no more than 90 minutes at a stretch.
I can understand that. I've had students who've said that for years.
Too bad. Yeah, so just send us a check for $382 and we'll broadcast this.
Done.
Yes.
All right. Hey, in fairness to the NMRA, and because I want everybody to realize that I want the NMRA to succeed at its highest level, give us, Jim, the number one thing that you would like people to know about the NMRA. What is it that the Jim Gore, who is the director at large for North America, what is the one thing that Jim Gore would like people to know about the NMRA?
You get out of it what you put into it. If you don't put anything into it, you're not going to get much out. It's an organization by people who are model railroaders, and it's nothing more than that.
Sounds good to me, Bruce?
Exactly.
All right. Bruce, can you give out our email address?
Our email address, if you want to send us an email, and please do, because we like getting emails to see what you think. Modeler's Life, modelers with one L, modellerslife@gmail.com.
Jim, after this, would you like to join us for a very lovely thing we call the Kelly questions?
Sure, be glad to.
All right, because that'll be another whole show. So, Jim, at the end of this, we have I'm assuming you've listened to every episode of the podcast and some of them twice.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. Good answer, Jim. So at the end, at the appropriate moment, I'm going to need you to say happy rails to you.
I'll be glad to.
All right.
Can we talk about our webpage?
Sure, if you give me a chance. I was trying to mix it up,
Okay.
Bruce. I'm trying to mix it up.
Oh, all right. Okay. Sorry.
I'm
Sorry.
trying to make the show more interesting for Tom Jacobs as he whisks his way to. Did you know Tom Jacobs' sister-in-law is marrying James Mattern?
That's kind of scary, isn't it?
Well, it's scary for her.
Well,
I'm hoping to get an invite to the shindig, or at least a piece of cake.
uh-huh.
Anyway,
There you go.
yeah, there you go. So we have a website called at amodelerslife.com. That's amodelerslife.com. And if you go there, you're going to find all kinds of cool stuff and tells you all about our upcoming episodes and some clinics and all kinds of cool stuff is on there. And that's it, right, Bruce? Have I covered it all?
We're pretty much there. It's now up to you and Jim.
All right. Okay. So are you ready, Jim?
I'm ready.
I know what I wanted to tell you. Just a little quick something, Jim, that you might be interested in. Just a little side note. It snows approximately 29.8 days in New Hampshire.
Is that all?
Yeah, and the accumulation each on average is 60.8 inches.
That sounds right.
Yeah, which is 5 feet.
5 feet.
5 feet of snow, Jim.
Yes, I've heard.
Yeah. So you might want to load that snowblower up in the trailer and take it up there first.
I believe I will.
Yeah, and how come, Jim, you're not going for 6 or 7 months?
Well, we are in a way a manner of speaking because we don't intend to spend very many winters there. But we're not going to own a house somewhere else. We're just going to travel.
Oh yeah. Okay,
Yep.
So you're not going to keep your place in Florida?
Nope.
All right. So you're gonna bail in the winter in New Hampshire.
Yep, that's what we've talked about. We've got a lot of places yet we want to travel and places we haven't gone yet. So,
Do you have any kids, Jim?
yes, I do.
All right. And their names are
Just Erin.
just Aaron.
Just Erin. She's a professor in Maryland.
Okay, so her first name is Justin, her middle name is
Oh,
Erin.
yeah, right. Erin. Erin. Oh, Lord help us.
And where does she teach?
She teaches at Loyola of Maryland.
Okay, so then Maryland, so that they probably get about 2 feet of snow.
Probably so.
Yeah.
She's used to it.
5 feet of snow, Jim.
I'm not scared.
Not
I lived
now.
in Montana for 5 years.
There you go.
Yeah, you're not scared now. You'll be scared one day when you can't get out of your door. Get out the door. You know what? This is the way.
It's July.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's the way it works. I live in the snow belt, and every year for the last 32 years, I've gone through the same procedure. It never changes. It's the same procedure every single winter. I've noticed that over the years. We get lake effect snow off the Great Lakes, and the first snowfall, I think to myself, man, this is beautiful. It's just so gorgeous the way this soft snow falls down, and you get about 6 inches of snow, and you think, man, this is just beautiful. The second snowfall comes, and it seems even more picturesque, Rockwell-ish. It's gorgeous, and you're thinking, man, this is just the life. I don't mind the snow because it's so beautiful. And then by the 4th or 5th snowfall, you're thinking to yourself, enough already with the snowfall.
Yeah.
And then you'll get the dump that drops 20 inches.
And then by the 7th or 8th or 10th snowfall, you're going, why am I living here?
Well, I have a friend who's about to retire. He's an MD in northern New Mexico. And he told me that he's going to strap a snow shovel on the roof of his car and drive south until somebody looks at it and says, hey, what is that? And then he's going to stop. So
That's always cute how people, Bruce, from northern New Mexico think they get a lot of snow.
we used to get about 48 inches a year.
Yeah, and between January 10th and January 25th.
Oh no! No! We were up at 7,500 feet elevation, and it snowed a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You keep telling yourself that, Jim.
Okay.
You know what? Next winter, when you're waist deep in snow and you've just finished cleaning the driveway, and the plow goes by, and you're in the snowblower to the end of the driveway, and then it runs out of gas, and you got to trudge back into the garage to get the gas can, and then you realize the gas can is empty.
It's empty.
So the only way you can get out of the driveway is to shovel where the snowplow just went. Yeah, you tell me about how wonderful it is then.
Okay, I'll give you a call.
Yeah, give me a dingle on the blower. And see if I answer.
Okay.
Okay. Now enough of this foolishness. Come on. We 60 inches. That's average, which means really means the government jockeys all those. It really means he's looking at about 10 feet all day long. Well, Jim, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
Happy rails to you.
It's another Lincoln Homer.